Part 1: The Christmas That Changed Everything. Christmas Eve was supposed to be quiet. That's what I told myself as I sat the small artificial tree by the window of my apartment, its lights flickering unevenly like they were tired too. No family dinner, no laughter, just me, a mug of reheated coffee, and the hum of the old heater that never quite worked. I hadn't been invited to my son Daniel's house this year, not directly, at least. Earlier that morning, he'd called. His voice was flat, polite in the way strangers are polite. "Dad, we're keeping things simple this year," he said. "No pressure to come." I understood what that meant, or at least I thought I did. Still, a few hours later, there was a knock on my door. Daniel stood there with his wife, Melissa. She wore a perfect smile, the kind that never reached her eyes. Daniel wouldn't look at me. "We just wanted to drop something off," Melissa said, holding out a small gift bag. Red, shiny, light to light. Inside was a card. No wrapping paper, no ribbon. Just a folded piece of cardstock. Daniel cleared his throat. "Go on." I opened it. 3 lines. "Merry Christmas, Dad. The best gift for all of us would be for you to stop existing in our lives." The room went silent. I looked up, expecting a laugh. A cruel joke, something. Melissa tilted her head, studying my reaction like this was an experiment. Daniel finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's just honest," he said. "You've always been a burden, a burden." I smiled, not because it was funny, but because something inside me finally broke cleanly, no jagged edges left. "I see," I said softly. They left a moment later, the door closing with a gentle click that echoed louder than any shout. I sat down slowly, card still in my hand. For years, I'd swallowed words. Apologies I didn't owe. Guilt they handed me so easily. I told myself that being a father meant enduring anything. But that night, as the Christmas lights flickered and the heater rattled, I realized something important. Sometimes disappearing isn't weakness. Sometimes it's a choice. And the choice I made next would change everything for them and for me. If you're drawn to powerful stories of family, betrayal, and quiet strength, make sure to subscribe now. This is only the beginning, and what comes next will surprise you. Part 2 is coming, and that's where the real story begins. Part 2: The Silence After the Storm. The days after Christmas passed in a strange, hollow quiet. No calls, no messages, no half-hearted apologies. At first, the silence hurt more than the words on that card. I kept expecting my phone to buzz, Daniel calling to say he didn't mean it, that Melissa pushed him, that emotions ran high. Nothing came. On the 3rd day, I folded the card carefully and placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk. Not to hide it, but to remember. Some truths need to stay close. I went back to my routines. Morning walks, cheap groceries, long evenings with nothing but old documentaries and the sound of my own breathing. From the outside, my life looked the same. Inside, something had shifted. For years, I had lived like a guest in my own existence, quiet, apologetic, grateful for scraps of attention. I realized how often I had rearranged my life to fit into theirs. Sold my house early so I could help them financially. Babysat when they needed it. Stayed quiet when Melissa mocked my job, my clothes, my old car. All of it, done in the name of family. And all of it, apparently, unwanted. One afternoon, while sorting through old paperwork, I found a folder I hadn't opened in years. Thick, heavy, important documents from a life Daniel barely knew anything about. My savings, my investments, the consulting contracts I'd taken quietly after retirement. I laughed under my breath. They thought I was struggling, that I was clinging to them because I had nothing else. The truth was, I had been clinging because I was afraid to be alone. That fear was gone now. That same evening, I received an email from Melissa. Short, cold, businesslike. We think it's best if we go low contact for a while. Please don't reach out unless it's urgent. Low contact. As if I were a nuisance subscription they were canceling, I didn't reply. Instead, I booked an appointment with my lawyer the next morning. A woman named Ruth, sharp-eyed and calm, who had helped me years ago when I sold my house. She listened quietly as I told her everything. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "So, what do you want to do now?" I thought of the card, the words, the ease with which they erased me. "I want peace," I said, "and I want control over my own life again." Ruth nodded. "Then we start by making sure no one else has power over it." That was the day I stopped waiting to be wanted and began planning what came next. In part 3, a single unexpected message pulls me back into Daniel's world and forces me to decide whether I'm truly ready to walk away or finally stand my ground. Part 3, the call that changed the rules. I thought the silence would last longer. After meeting Ruth, I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time, my future wasn't shaped by guilt or obligation. It was mine. I spent that week doing small, deliberate things I'd postponed for too long. I updated my will, closed an old joint account Daniel still technically had access to, even bought myself a new coat. Nothing extravagant, just something chosen without asking anyone's opinion. Then, late Friday evening, my phone rang. "Daniel?" I stared at the screen as if it might burn me. For a full 10 seconds, I didn't answer. My heart wasn't racing. I wasn't afraid. I was curious. I picked up. "Dad," he said quickly, before I could speak. His voice sounded tight, controlled. "We need to talk." "We already did," I replied calmly. "On Christmas." There was a pause. I could hear breathing on the other end. "That was a misunderstanding," he said. "Things were said that shouldn't have been." I almost laughed. "A misunderstanding," I repeated. "You told me the best gift would be me disappearing." That wasn't unclear. Another pause, longer this time. "Melissa was upset," he said finally. "She's been under a lot of stress." I closed my eyes. There it was, the excuse, the familiar script. "Daniel," I said quietly, "you didn't read that card under stress. You wrote it. You signed your name." Silence again. Then his tone changed subtly, but unmistakably. "Look," he said, "this doesn't need to be a big thing. We just need some space. That's all. Space. Funny how space only works one way." "Is that why you called?" I asked. "To tell me not to contact you?" "No," he said quickly. "Actually, we need your help." "Of course." I leaned back in my chair. "With what?" I asked. "Well," he hesitated. "There's an issue with the house refinance. The bank needs an additional guarantor, and since you helped us before." I stopped him. "I didn't help you," I said. "I sacrificed for you. There's a difference." "Dad." "No," I cut in, still calm. "You told me to disappear. I'm honoring that." His breath hitched. "So you're just going to abandon us?" he snapped. "After everything." I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "After everything," I echoed. "You mean after being tolerated as long as I was useful?" "That's not fair." "No," I said softly. "It's accurate." The anger crept into his voice. "You're being dramatic." There it was again, the dismissal. I stood up and walked to the window, watching the city lights flicker on. "Daniel," I said, "this conversation is over. I wish you well, but I won't be financing a life where I'm treated like a burden." He swore under his breath. "You'll regret this," he said. I didn't respond. I hung up. For a moment, my hands trembled, not from fear but from clarity. That call confirmed everything I needed to know. The apology wasn't real. The regret wasn't about me. It was about money. The next morning, I met Ruth again. She listened, then smiled knowingly. "Good," she said. "Now we move forward without illusions." That afternoon, I received another email from Melissa. This one wasn't cold. It was panicked. She wrote about misunderstandings, about family, about forgiveness, about how she never meant to hurt me. At the bottom, one line stood out. "We really need you right now." I deleted the email, not out of spite, out of self-respect. That night, I sat at my desk and made a list, not of grudges, of boundaries, what I would accept, what I would never accept again, and what I was finally ready to let go of. For years, I thought survival meant endurance. I was wrong. Survival sometimes means walking away and letting others face the consequences of their choices. In part 4, an unexpected visitor shows up at my door, forcing me to confront a truth I never saw coming and revealing that Christmas wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Part 4, the knock I didn't expect rewritten. The knock came just after dusk. 3 slow taps, careful, almost hesitant. I wasn't expecting anyone. Ever since Christmas, my world had shrunk to silence and routine, and I'd learned to trust that quiet more than people. Still, something made me get up. When I opened the door, my heart tightened. It wasn't my son. It was Lena Daniel's younger sister. She stood there clutching her coat like armor, eyes red, lips pressed together, as if she'd practiced what to say and still wasn't ready. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I stepped aside without a word. She walked in slowly, looking around the apartment as if seeing it for the first time. The small space, the simple furniture, the life I'd downsized into quietly while helping everyone else stay comfortable. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. I poured tea, not because I was being polite, but because my hands needed something to do. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "I found out what they wrote on that card," she said. "The Christmas one." I looked at her. And it wasn't just Melissa," she said, voice shaking. "Daniel knew. He approved it." That hurt more than I expected. Not because it surprised me, but because a part of me had still hoped. "He said," Lena continued, "Dad will understand. He always does." I closed my eyes for a moment. "Yes," I said quietly. "He was right about that." Until he wasn't. Lena reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "I wasn't supposed to see this," she said. "But I did, and I couldn't pretend anymore." She slid it across the table. Bank statements, loan documents, my name used as collateral, my signature copied. "They took out loans using your credit," she whispered. "They told me you agreed, that you wanted to help." I felt something settle inside me. Not anger, certainty. "How long?" I asked. "Almost 2 years," she said. "They're drowning. And now the bank is closing in." I leaned back slowly. "So that's why they wanted me gone," I said. "Not because I was a burden. Because I was a liability they couldn't control anymore." Lena nodded, tears spilling over. "I tried to warn him," she said. "I told him this would destroy everything." I looked at her, really looked at her. "You did the right thing coming here," I said. "But what are you going to do?" she asked. "If you don't help them, they'll lose the house, everything." I folded the papers neatly and handed them back. "They already made their choice," I said. "I'm just finally respecting it." She stared at me, stunned. "You're not angry?" she asked. "I am," I said honestly. "But anger doesn't mean surrender." Before she left, she stopped at the door. "I'm sorry," she said, "for not standing up sooner." I nodded. "You stood up now. That matters." After she left, I sat alone in the quiet apartment. For the first time, the pieces fit. The card, the coldness, the sudden desire for distance. They hadn't wanted me gone because I was nothing. They wanted me gone because I was the last thing keeping their lives from collapsing. And now that I knew, everything was about to change. In part 5, the legal consequences finally arrive, and I'm forced to decide whether protecting myself means saving my son, or letting him face the truth alone. Part 5, the day I chose myself. The letter arrived 2 days later. No warning, no phone call, Just a thick envelope slid under my door like a quiet threat. I knew what it was before I opened it. The weight, the tone, the kind of paper banks use when patience is gone. Final notice, legal action pending. I sat at the table for a long time, the letter unopened in my hands. For years, letters like this had terrified me not because of what they said, but because of what they meant. Responsibility. Fix it. Clean it up. Save everyone. But this time, something was different. I opened it. Foreclosure proceedings had officially begun. Accounts frozen. A deadline printed in bold, cold and precise. No room for negotiation. No emotional language. Just facts. The bank didn't care that Daniel was my son. Didn't care that Christmas had been cruel. Didn't care about intentions. Only signatures. And lies. My phone started ringing less than an hour later. Daniel? I watched it vibrate on the table until it stopped. Then again, and again. By the fifth call, I answered not because I felt guilty, but because I was done running from the truth. Dad, he said the moment I picked up, his voice breaking. Please, you have to help us. They're taking everything. Said nothing. Melissa says if you just talk to the bank, just confirm you're backing us, they'll stop this. I took a breath. Daniel, I said slowly, did you use my name without my consent? Silence. Did you? I repeated. Yes, he whispered, but I was going to tell you. I swear. When? I asked. After you told me to disappear. His breathing became uneven. We were desperate, he said. The business failed. The debts piled up. You were always there before. I stopped him. That's exactly the problem, I said. I was always there. He snapped then, anger spilling through panic. So you're just going to abandon us, he shouted. After everything we've done for you? I laughed softly, not mocking, just tired. You told me the best gift would be me disappearing, I said. I'm honoring that. That was a mistake, he yelled. You know Melissa didn't mean. No, I said firmly. That was clarity. He started crying, full, broken sobs. I'm scared, he said. I don't know how to fix this. I closed my eyes. For a moment, the old instinct surged, the urge to rescue, to sacrifice, to bleed quietly so others could stand. But then I remembered the card, the signatures, the forged documents. I love you, I said honestly. But love doesn't mean destroying myself to save you from consequences. So that's it, he whispered. You're choosing money over your own son. I stood up, pacing slowly. No, I said. I'm choosing truth over lies, responsibility over manipulation, and myself. For the first time, he hung up, not angrily, desperately. That night, Melissa sent messages, long ones, apologies tangled with accusations, promises mixed with blame. She said I was heartless, that I was punishing them, that family didn't treat each other this way. I didn't reply. Instead, I called Ruth. She listened carefully, then said, You did the hardest thing possible. What's that? I asked. You stopped enabling, she replied. The next morning, I signed one document, not to help them, to protect myself. A formal affidavit stating I had no knowledge of the loans, no consent, no involvement. It felt like closing a door I'd been holding open for years. That afternoon, I went for a walk. The air was cold, but clean. Christmas lights still hung from balconies, flickering like nothing had happened. I realized then this wasn't revenge. This was release. For years, I thought being a good father meant enduring pain quietly. I was wrong. Sometimes, being a good father means letting your child face the truth, even when it hurts both of you. In part 6, the bank moves forward, the truth becomes public, and I receive an unexpected call that forces Daniel and everyone else to see me not as a burden, but as the one person who finally refused to disappear. Part 6, when the truth became public. The bank didn't wait. 3 days after I signed the affidavit, Daniel and Melissa were officially served. Notices posted. Accounts frozen. A legal clock started ticking, loud enough for everyone around them to hear. And once banks move, silence disappears. Neighbors started asking questions. Friends stopped returning calls. The version of the story Daniel and Melissa had been telling for years that I was difficult, needy, unstable collapsed the moment paperwork entered the room, because documents don't lie to protect feelings. I found out the truth went public when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Harris?" a man asked. "This is Evan Clark from the Herald." I almost hung up. Almost. "We're running a piece on a foreclosure tied to alleged identity misuse," he continued. "Your name appears in the filings. We wanted to give you a chance to comment. So this was it. The part where things stop being private. I won't discuss family matters," I said carefully, "but I will confirm one thing. I did not authorize any loans, and I was asked to remove myself from my son's life. I respected that request." There was a pause on the other end. "Thank you," he said quietly. "That's very clear." The article ran the next morning. No drama, no insults, just facts. And facts have a way of rearranging reality. Daniel's employer placed him on leave pending review. Melissa's friends so quick to post holiday photos and quotes about gratitude went silent. Invitations disappeared. Support evaporated. That afternoon, there was another knock at my door. This time, it was Daniel. He looked nothing like the man who had stood in my doorway weeks earlier. Confident and dismissive. His coat was wrinkled, his eyes hollow. He looked smaller. "I won't come in," he said. "I just needed to see you." I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "I read the article," he said. "Everyone did." "I know," I replied. "They think I used you," he said, voice cracking. "You did," I said gently. He flinched. "I didn't mean it like that," he said. "I thought if we could just get through this rough patch." "By erasing me?" I asked. He couldn't answer. We stood there in silence, winter air filling the space where excuses used to live. "I don't recognize myself anymore," he whispered. I believed him. "That happens," I said, "when you build your life on avoiding responsibility." He looked up at me, then really looked. "You're not helping because you hate me," he said slowly. "You're not helping because you finally respect yourself." I nodded. "That's the truth you didn't expect," I said. Tears ran down his face. He didn't wipe them away. "I don't know how to fix this," he said. "For once," I replied, "that's not my job." He left without another word. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the city quiet beneath the hum of winter. For the first time since Christmas, I didn't feel heavy. I felt steady. I realized something important then. I hadn't disappeared. I had reappeared to myself. And whether Daniel understood it now or later didn't change one thing. The choice I made was irreversible. In part 7, Daniel makes one final attempt to regain control, but this time, the decision won't be his to make, and the outcome will redefine our relationship forever. Part 7, the last attempt. I didn't hear from Daniel for nearly 2 weeks after that. No calls, no messages, no sudden emergencies demanding my attention. The silence felt different this time, not tense, not punishing. It felt intentional, as if something was being prepared. I was in the middle of making dinner one evening when Ruth called. "Have you heard from your son today?" she asked. "No," I said. "Why?" "He filed a motion," she replied. "An emergency petition." I closed my eyes. "Of course he did." "What kind of motion?" I asked. "She's claiming you're mentally unfit," Ruth said calmly. "That you're confused, isolated, and acting out of grief. He's requesting temporary control over your remaining assets to protect you." I laughed once sharp, disbelieving. "So after telling me to disappear, he's trying to take over my life?" "Yes," Ruth said. "It's a last-ditch move, and a desperate one." My hands trembled not from fear, but from the audacity of it. "When is the hearing?" I asked. Tomorrow morning. The courtroom felt smaller than the last one, less public, more personal. Daniel sat at the opposite table, flanked by a young attorney who kept whispering in his ear. Melissa wasn't there. That told me everything. When Daniel looked at me, his expression wasn't angry. It was pleading. The judge, a woman with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense, listened. As Daniel's attorney spoke, they painted a careful picture. A grieving father, estranged from family, making irrational financial decisions, a danger to himself. Then it was my turn. Ruth stood calmly. Your Honor, she said, this case is not about mental fitness. It's about control. She presented the card, the Christmas message, the bank records, the forged signatures, the affidavit. She showed the judge emails, messages where Daniel explicitly asked me to step away and stop interfering. Mr. Harris was only confused, Ruth concluded, when he stopped being useful. The judge turned to Daniel. Is that true? She asked. Daniel opened his mouth, closed it. I was trying to help him, he said finally. He wouldn't listen. The judge leaned forward slightly. Mr. Harris, she said, looking at me, do you feel incapable of managing your affairs? I met her eyes. No, I said clearly. I feel capable for the first time in years. She studied me for a long moment. Then she ruled. The petition was denied. Not just denied, dismissed. Daniel's attempt to control my life officially ended in that room. As we stood to leave, Daniel reached for me. Dad, wait. I turned. I didn't want it to come to this, he said quietly. I know, I replied. But you let it. He nodded slowly, like a man finally understanding a lesson too late. I don't know where we go from here, he said. I thought for a moment. Neither do I answered honestly. But wherever it is, it won't be built on fear. I walked out alone, not abandoned, not erased, just free. In part 8, time passes, the dust finally settles, and an unexpected moment forces Daniel and me to confront what family really means after everything that's been said and done. Part 8, what was left after the silence, approximately equals 5,000 characters. 3 months passed. Not dramatically, not painfully, quietly, the kind of quiet that settles in after a storm, when you're not sure whether the damage is over or just hidden. My days found a rhythm again. Morning walks, cooking real meals, long afternoons reading books I'd bought years ago but never opened because I was always needed somewhere else. No one needed me now, and for the first time, that didn't feel like rejection. It felt like space. Daniel didn't call. Melissa disappeared completely. The court's decision stood firm, and the bank proceedings continued without my involvement. Occasionally, I saw updates, online, subtle things. A job change, a house listing quietly removed, lives shrinking the way mine once had. I didn't celebrate. I didn't mourn. I let it be. One afternoon, Ruth invited me to her office for what she called a cleanup meeting. Final documents, loose ends, closure. As she slid the last folder across the table, she paused. There's something else, she said. I looked up. Daniel requested mediation, she continued. Not legal, personal. I felt my chest tighten, not with fear, but with caution. What does he want? I asked. He says he wants to apologize, she replied, and to ask if there's any way forward. I didn't answer right away. Apologies used to undo me, pull me back in, convince me to carry weight that wasn't mine, but I wasn't that man anymore. I'll meet him, I said slowly, on my terms. We met in a small public park halfway between our homes. Neutral ground. Daniel arrived early. He looked different, thinner, quieter, stripped of the confidence that once protected him. He stood when he saw me. Thank you for coming, he said. I nodded and sat on the bench opposite him. He didn't rush this time. I was wrong, he said finally. About everything. I waited. I told myself you were holding me back, he continued. But the truth is, I was ashamed of how much I depended on you. That surprised me. When you stopped saving me, he said, I had to face what I'd become. I studied his face. I saw regret there. Real regret, not desperation. I don't expect forgiveness, he said quickly. And I'm not asking for money or help. Then why are you here? I asked. He swallowed. Because I don't want my last memory of you to be that card. The Christmas card. I reached into my coat and pulled it out, still folded, still intact. I kept it, I said. He winced. I deserved that, he said. We sat in silence for a long moment. I don't hate you, I said finally, but I won't go back to how things were. He nodded. I wouldn't want you to. Any relationship we have, I continued, will be slow, honest, and it won't cost me my dignity. Tears filled his eyes. I can do that, he whispered. I stood. We'll see, I said. As I walked away, I felt something unexpected. Not closure, but possibility. That evening, I returned home to a message on my phone. A voicemail, not from Daniel, from the community center 2 blocks away. Mr. Harris, the woman said cheerfully, we heard you used to mentor young professionals. We're starting a free program and wondered if you'd be interested. I smiled. For years, my life had been about holding onto one relationship no matter the cost. Now, life was offering something different. Connection without control. Purpose without sacrifice. I looked around my apartment, the small space that had become my sanctuary. I hadn't disappeared. I had finally arrived. In part 9, a public moment brings everything full circle, and I'm forced to decide whether forgiveness is something you give or something you grow into. Part 9, the moment everyone saw. I didn't expect to see Daniel again so soon. A week after the park meeting, the community center called to confirm the mentoring program. They were hosting a small open event, nothing formal. Just coffee, folding chairs, a few local speakers. I almost said no. Old habits die hard. But something in me wanted to show up, not to prove anything, but to exist without apology. The room was modest. Posters taped to the walls. A dozen young people talking nervously about careers, debt, pressure. I recognized the fear in their eyes. I'd worn it once. When it was my turn to speak, I stood at the front and told the truth. Not a dramatic version. Not a heroic one. I talked about mistakes. About giving too much. About confusing love with obligation. About how saying no saved my life more than any yes ever had. The room was quiet. Then, from the back, a familiar voice spoke. He was always there for us. I froze. Daniel stood near the door. He looked uncertain, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to be there. I didn't plan to speak, he said, addressing the room more than me. But I think people should know. My father taught me what responsibility looked like. I just didn't understand it until I lost it. A murmur passed through the audience. He turned to me. I hurt you, he said, voice steady but raw, publicly and privately, and I'm still living with the consequences. No excuses, no deflection, just ownership. I don't know what our future looks like, he continued, but I'm trying to become someone who deserves one. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was respectful. I nodded once. That was all. After the event, people thanked me, asked questions, shared pieces of their own stories. I felt useful, not needed. There's a difference. Outside, Daniel waited. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, he said. You didn't, I replied. You spoke your truth. That's rare. He hesitated. I'm not asking for forgiveness today. I know, I said. I just didn't want to hide anymore. That's a good place to start, I replied. We stood there for a moment, the city moving around us. Not fixed, not broken, just honest. As I walked home, I realized something important. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a direction you walk toward. And for the first time since Christmas, we were both facing the same way. In part 10 final, a quiet Christmas returns. A choice is tested one last time, and I discovered that disappearing was never the answer. Becoming whole was. Part 10. The Christmas I chose to stay approximately equals 5,000 characters. Final. December came back quietly. No dramatic countdown. No emotional build-up. Just colder mornings, longer nights, and the faint return of holiday lights in shop windows. Like the world was gently reminding me that time doesn't stop for anyone's pain. A year ago, Christmas had shattered something inside me. This year, it asked a question instead. What do you do when the wound no longer controls you? I spent the weeks leading up to it differently. I volunteered twice a week at the community center, mentoring people who were younger than Daniel Young, enough to still believe that success meant approval. I told them the truth I'd learned too late. Approval is not the same as love. One evening, as I locked up the center, my phone buzzed. Daniel? I didn't tense this time. Dad, he said. I wanted to ask. Nothing big. Just would you be willing to have coffee sometime? No expectations. I looked at the calendar. December 24th. I smiled. Coffee would be fine, I said. We met at a small cafe neither of us had ever been to before. Neutral territory. New ground. Daniel arrived alone. No Melissa. No rehearsed speeches. He looked healthier. Not happier yet, but grounded. Like someone who had stopped pretending. I didn't bring a gift, he said awkwardly. I didn't expect one, I replied. He nodded. Good. We talked about ordinary things. Weather, work, books, the mentoring program. Not the past. Not at first. Finally, he cleared his throat. I still think about that card, he said quietly. Every day. So do I replied. He waited, maybe for anger, maybe for punishment. I gave him honesty. It changed me, I said, but not in the way you probably think. He looked up. It forced me to see that I'd been shrinking my whole life so others could feel comfortable. And once I stopped doing that, I didn't disappear. He swallowed. I didn't want you gone. I wanted you quiet. I nodded. I know. That's worse, he said. Yes, I replied. It is. We sat in silence for a while. Not awkward, just real. I don't know if I deserve a place in your life, Daniel said eventually. I looked at him carefully. You don't earn a place by guilt, I said. You earn it by consistency. I can do that, he said, even if it takes years. I believed him, not because I needed to, but because I no longer needed to believe anything. When we stood to leave, he hesitated. Merry Christmas, he said softly. Merry Christmas, I replied. We hugged, not tightly, not desperately, just two people choosing not to walk away. That night, I went home and turned on the small tree in my apartment, the same one as last year, but this time, the lights didn't flicker. I made dinner for one by choice, put on music, opened a book. My phone buzzed once more, a message from Daniel. Thank you for not disappearing. I set the phone down and smiled, because here was the truth I'd learned, the one no card, no cruelty, no rejection could take away. I didn't disappear. I stopped vanishing, and that made all the difference. Sometimes, the most powerful choice isn't cutting people off. It's choosing yourself so that if they come back, they meet someone whole. The end.